and 2. They stack the line of scrimmage. There's Dom Hill. There he goes. Dom Hill 40. Dom Hill 30. Downhill Dom Hill. Touchdown. 61 yards.
Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show on 365 Sports. Brought to you by Peter Chevrolet.
Medlock, they fake it to him. James Keeper off the left side, breaks the tackle, into the secondary, skips away, and he will score. Touchdown, Duncanville.
Here's David Smoke.
This is it. The last week of the regular season, the last district games in Texas high school football. A lot of teams have already clinched their playoff berths. And of course, the way that 5A and below are set up, everybody knows already before the season began if they were Division I and Division II. And of course, in 6A, it's different. You have a district, 4 teams get in based on enrollment. Then they seed who's Division I and Division II. Most of you know that, but it can get a little bit confusing. And home field advantage, of course, for teams in 6A who are the higher seeds. For example, in the district that I cover a lot, 11 6A has Duncanville, DeSoto, right now Waxahachie, and Lancaster. In District 12 6A, it's going to be Harker Heights, Midway, Temple, and also Shoemaker. But there's still not real sure. Some schools know based on their enrollment if they're going Division I, yes, but they're still up for grabs on who's the Division I number 1 seed in 12 6A. Right now it would be Midway. Temple can, if they beat Harker Heights, I think it's by 5 or 6 points or more, they would then get into a tiebreaker situation with Temple, Midway, and also Harker Heights and get in Division I, the number 1 seed, which could push Midway to the number 2 seed in 6A, and they would play Duncanville rather than Waxahachie. Waxahachie's good, beat Midway a year ago, but it can get confusing. Harker Heights takes care of their business. They're the number 1 seed, Division II. And Midway would be the number 1 seed in Division I. So there was a game. There were of a lot of the games that we had last week that were the elite games and pick'em games on Smoaky.com, my high school website that I've owned and started since 2002. There were a lot of 35-34 and 45-44 type games. A lot of them. We'll get to a few of them in just a moment. But one of them was this game between Jefferson and Liberty Ilo, 2 very good teams in 3A. Jefferson has a running back in Cameron Williams who has put up a ton of yards throughout his career. Ty Taylor's the head coach. Liberty Ilo with Brad Willard as the coach. He was on a staff with Art Browse at Mount Vernon, and he's got some dudes on his team too. They went down to the wire. Jefferson scored to get within 1 of Liberty Ilo. Under a minute to play. And this is a broken play that Jefferson turns into a 2-point conversion. There's a quarterback, Taylor, takes the snap, looks like he's going to come to the near side. He's in trouble, ditches it off. Williams gets in, touchdown, and gives Jefferson a 35-34 lead. I think there was, from what Coach Taylor told me, there's a shot, the still shot from the sideline. And the 2-point conversion is good. And Jefferson beat Liberty Ilo. And hell of a game. Now, some of the best wins, that's one of them, Jefferson beating Liberty Ilo. Louisville with a 10-point win against Geyer, 27-17. College Station, we knew this would be a shootout. Beat Weiss out of Pflugerville, 44-38. 2 schools down in the southern part of Texas. Flower Bluff from Corpus Christi, 28, and PSJA North, 27. Walnut Grove with a nice win against Melissa, 37-28. Huntsville, 44. Nederland, 38. That's a final. Port Neches Grove beat Montgomery, 37-31. Springtown, the Porcupines, with a win over Decatur, 41-38. Silsbee and Jasper, I don't know this. I could be so wrong on this, but I bet, I don't know if I would bet like a body part. I say that a lot of times absolutely in jest, but I think almost every time they play it's like 45-42, 45-43, 50-48. And Silsbee got Jasper 49 to 47 last week. There's Jefferson once again against Liberty Ilo. Grandview has been a team, I'm not saying of destiny, but they have won a ton of games this year with the last possession, goal line stands. There was that famous goal line stand, I think, of earlier this year against, Whitney. They beat West 20-17. Big Sandy, 35, Hawkins 34, and then Overton with a shootout win beating Mount Enterprise. Keegan Ash, by the way, who had been out for a while, the running back at Mount Enterprise, who puts up huge numbers. Remember last year he had a game over 500 yards, and we'll have that note in just a second. He's back, but Overton with the passing attack led by Bryce Steele, 45-44 against Mount Enterprise. Now, we don't have these names or graphics up on the screen, but I'll tell you about, in my opinion, and I try to pick 8 to 10 of these every week, the best individual performances from last week. Honeygrove's Levi Beavers, 26 carries, 129 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He also threw for 154 yards and a score. Okay, that's okay. I mean, it's good, but that's not normally something I would mention. But 15 tackles, 10 of them solo. He also recovered a fumble and had 2 tackles behind the line of scrimmage in a win against Cooper, 26-14. John Denman, the running back from Palestine Westwood. Remember, they had the coaching change during the season. Richard Bishop was suspended for the rest of the year. Former Palestine High coach Glenn Tunstall takes over as the interim. He was the head coach at Palestine when Adrian Peterson was there. Now he's at Westwood. Denman, a heck of a player. D1 running back, 22 carries, 281 yards, 2 scores, and they beat Fairfield 62-38. Trevor Golightly, Edgewood. They score a lot of points. They're not perfect, but they have put up a lot of points. He was 12 for 12 passing for 425 yards. Now stop for a second. That's 35.6 yards per attempt. A completion, too, because he was 12 for 12. 6 touchdowns. Did not throw a pass in the second half. And he threw for 425 yards. Brady McCowan, yes, a part of that lineage of the McCowan family. From Gilmer, he was 19 of 27, passing for 367 yards and 4 touchdowns in a 30-point win against Spring Hill. Bryce Still, I mentioned him, the quarterback at Overton. 255 yards passing, 3 scores. 88 yards rushing, 3 scores. He also had a 2-point conversion rushing, 10 tackles, a caused fumble, and a fumble recovery in that win against Mount Enterprise. How about Cam Williams? I mentioned we showed the video. Garrett Ross running the weekly podcast with me. He had 228 yards and 34 carries, scored the touchdown, and then, of course, caught a touchdown pass, too, and then scored the game-winning 2-point conversion with 40 seconds to go. Now, Cam Williams has been putting up 200 yards, it seems like, weekly. I would rather, and I know this is a little bit like math, not me, I would rather see a running back who puts up 200, 250, or 175 yards, but he has like 35 carries. That's meat and potatoes. You know, there are going to be some, because they're so dynamic and because of the game being spread out like it is, that might have 10 carries for 244 yards and average a lot more yards per carry and 4 or 5 touchdowns. That's great. I wouldn't take that away. It's not like I wouldn't want that, but there's something to me, and maybe somewhat with that old school mentality, although I've learned to even accept things along the way as technology has changed. 34 carries, 228 or 30 yards. That's just something that I love to death. Now, Chapel Hill head coach Jeff Reardon told me, I asked him this. This is the stat sheet for his senior, Trevor Brooks. 12 tackles, 7 tackles behind the line of scrimmage and 2 sacks. He threw a pass for 24 yards. He caught 2 passes for 22 yards. He had a punt return for 5 yards. He also punts. He's a pretty big kid. 4 punts for a 44-yard average. One of those ended up inside the 5, and they beat Henderson 42-14. They continue to play without Demetrius Brisbane, who is now, at least for now, still suspended from the football team. Them winning the game is not a surprise. Henderson, remember, upset Kilgore 2 or 3 weeks ago. I asked Coach Reardon about Trevor Brooks because he puts up some other big numbers sometimes too. He said it's the best player he's ever coached. And they've got Chapel Hill, they've got some dudes, including on their team with Ricky, the the running back who is already committed to the University of Texas. Now, a couple other guys from the Central Texas area. Case Evans, quarterback at Lexington. This was the first stat that was sent to me late Friday night when I got back from the game in Bryan. 327 yards passing, 5 scores. He also ran for 64 and a touchdown against Comfort. Sidney Holland continues to put up huge numbers at Ellison. 400 yards passing, 4 scores, and they beat Rudder by 13. And Jaden Jackson, if you saw the Baylor game and their win against last week against TCU, former Franklin Lions star Bryson Washington had 196 yards and 4 scores. He was a part of those back-to-back state championship teams when they won it. He was also a part as a sophomore of a team that lost because of a missed kick at the end of the game. Jaden Jackson now was next in line. He's a big, thick, strong, and also great speed. 9 carries for 290 yards. Average 32 yards a carry. Remember I mentioned I'd like to see guys with 25 to 35 carries. But when you can do that like that with 5 scores and a win against Yo, he's a stud. Jaden Jackson most likely will be playing Division I football next year. Also, Amarian Phillips from Centerville. Kyle Hardy, the head coach. This is a tough, tough team. 193 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, 107 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns, a tackle behind the line of scrimmage, 2 sacks and 5 tackles, and a win against Normandy. And I want to throw out Academy's Javion White, free safety, a junior, had a couple of interceptions. Both of them he ran back for touchdowns for 44 yards and 90 yards in the win for Academy against McGregor, 57-27. Now, I mentioned Keegan Ash, who's back from Mount Enterprise, had over 500 yards in a game last year. I want you to see a trend here. Garrett, here's the graphic. The first part of the graphic, these are, and this is not everybody, there are 20 high school players in the state of Texas in history, 20, who have rushed, who have gone over 500 yards rushing in a game. Now, Matt Gedek from McKinney against Plano East, that happened in 2017, which broke the record of Darrell Ellis. There's a story here from Somerville against Thrall in 1998. The same year, Tyson Thompson, who went to Irving High, ran for 525 yards against L.D. Bell. Now, I saw Tyson Thompson at Irving High because back then they were playing against Lee High School when I did their games, and I saw him put up, it was like 300 or 280 yards or so in a game at Trinity Mother Francis Rose Stadium. He was a long-legged, really good player. I think he went to TCU. Nothing really materialized there, but he had the same year. Okay, the first ever running back to go over 500 yards, which is still kind of just like sounds dumb to say that, was Kenneth Hall, the Sugar Land Express against Houston Lutheran back in 1953. That was the first time ever that a running back in Texas ran for over 500 yards in a game. And then you see the ones, there's the record built to the 599 by Gadet. I remember actually listening to that game online one night. And so I'd finished the broadcast and was listening to that game, and I was like, oh my God, he's going to do it. And he did. Now, the next part of this graphic. I bring this up because the first ever 500-yard game was Kenneth Hall in 1953. No one else did it that decade. No one else had ever done it before that decade. No one did it the next 3 decades, 60s, 70s, and 80s. 3 players went over 500 yards in the 90s, and I just showed you a couple of them with Darrell Ellis and also Tyson Thompson. 1 from 2000 to 2009. But look at the last 2 decades. There were 13 players. There had been 5 in the history of the state. 13 players rushed for over 500 yards in the 2010s. 13. And then already there's been 2, not already, the pace is probably more towards the lower number compared to the last decade with 2. Nobody's running over 500 this year. Thanks to TexasHighSchoolFootballHistory.com and Jerry Forrest, Jolie Smith. So, to me, you know, you see the wide open game. There are still some teams that run the slot tee or run the wing tee. There's still some. There's even some that still run a little bit of an option type attack. But really, when the game opened up and the wide receivers spread further out and you threw it all over the place, it gained more space for running backs and quarterbacks, which then developed, of course, the zone read. Maybe nobody was ever better than at that at the level of high school and college football than Vince Young, because all he needed was a step, right, and a little bit of space. There were Reggie McNeil at Lufkin and some others. Kyler Murray at Allen, but he also threw for a lot of yards too. So look at the trend. You think about it's a wide open game, and most people continue to think it's about the passing yards. And yes, there's a bunch of that going on too. But it's also opened up record-breaking numbers when it comes to rushing yards in a game, from in a game to a season and also in a career. So I wanted to bring that up, the trend of what's happened. 500 yards in a game, much less 599 by Gaudet against Plano East in 2017. One other high school note, then we'll come back with our guest, Todd Quick, who is the head coach at Lufkin, longtime coach under the late John Outlaw at Arkadelphia in Arkansas, at Sherman, and then Lufkin, and then took over as the head coach at Lufkin. Once the story came out that Coach Outlaw, the beloved John Outlaw, had passed away from a heart attack. We'll have him on. They've had a really good year, and they've got a game with Galveston Ball coming up this week. We'll have our Elite Games of the Week also coming up a little bit later on in the show. I saw this note. Stephenville ISD has named their new football stadium. Now, they've been playing their games at Tarleton State University forever, but they built their own stadium, and it is brand new. And they're naming it after Art Briles, who, of course, led them to 2 different pockets of state championships, 4 state championships. Then he got into college coaching. Then he ended up going to Houston to be a head coach, and then at Baylor, who had a nice run until everything fell apart in 2016. So they have named the new stadium after Art Briles, and that is a beautiful, beautiful stadium, and a note about that. Mike Copeland Field, former Stephenville coach at Art Briles Stadium, that stadium is about to be, I guess you could say, honored and open. When we come back, Todd Quick, head coach at Lufkin. We'll also have the Elite Games of the week. This is the last week of the regular season. And I think this season has flown by, in my opinion. Maybe there's been some bumps in the roads. There's this and that. But for the most part, this seems like it's been pretty smooth. Maybe it's just that I finally, after 45 years or 44 years, have kind of got myself in a pretty good routine. Garrett Ross is running this show today. I'm David Smoke, thanks to Peter Chevrolet, our weekly and constant sponsor of Smoaky.com and the statewide podcast. We'll come back with come back with Todd Quick and the Elite Games around the corner. This is the statewide high school football podcast.
When you need power, performance, and head-turning style, you need Peters Chevrolet. Check out the 2024 Chevrolet Silverado. 1.9% for 36 months with discounts up to $10,000 off on custom crew cabs. 2024 Silverado prices starting at $36,995. Whether you work hard or play hard, take your pick out of the largest selection of new Chevrolets at Peters Chevrolet. Online at peterscars.net. Peters Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
New arrivals just dropped at Barefoot Campus Outfitter in Waco. Looking for the best Baylor gear? Barefoot is the place to grab your gear. Game day polos, tees, tanks, caps, clear stadium bags, jewelry, and more. Barefoot Outfitters has all the essentials with unique campus apparel and offering comfortable garments and designs. Long-lasting images that people continue to enjoy wearing time and time again. Located right off I-35 on Spate, or shop at barefootcampusoutfitter.com and get free shipping on orders $75 or more. Go Bears!
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgan Ford. It's that time of year, it's football season. Bird Colgan Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgan Ford.
Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine and Orthopedics, the team physicians for Baylor Athletic, specializing in diagnosing and treatment of any and all sport-related injuries. Celebrating over 2 decades of service to Central Texas, they tackle all surgical and non-surgical problems that arise from an active lifestyle. Trust the doctors that Baylor trusts. And when injuries sideline you, don't wait for Monday. Join us at 8:30 on Saturday morning for a post-game injury evaluation clinic. Baylor Scott and White, Southwest Sports Medicine Orthopedics. We get you back in the game.
Where is the best beef in Texas? Your house. When you order from Texas Beef House and unleash the flavor of Texas-raised Wagyu. Texas Beef House now hosting twice monthly live auctions where you, the customer, set the cost of what you want to pay for ribeyes and New York strip, fillets, flat iron, brisket, tri-tip. So look online, TexasBeefHouse.com, and popping up will be the live auction dates coming up. Stay connected. It's TexasBeefHouse.com. From their pasture to your plate. Twice monthly live auctions, TexasBeefHouse.com. Lufkin Panthers are 8-1. They played Galveston Ball this week and on the verge trying to wrap up a district title after that huge win earlier this year against Port Arthur Memorial. And that game was just a couple of weeks ago, 30-23. Todd Quick, the head coach, and has been a part of the lineage, state championships in Arkansas, at Lufkin, and under what is the late, great John Outlaw, too. Todd, thank you very much for your time. This team, what you have this year, seems to have taken a step up. I know the last 4 years have been somewhat frustrating. Why this team? Why are they having the success they're having?
Well, this group has been together. They have stuck it out. There's 43 seniors. And they've been together. It makes a difference what the guy next to them thinks. Mm-hmm. And when you're playing for somebody else and not yourself, it makes a difference in the outcome. You always want that type of kids, and it's not as a popular thing now as what it used to be. But this group is very close, and when you're doing that, when you're playing for the guy next to you, playing for him, then good things happen.
You lost that opener, Longview, and we know about their long-time tradition and also how they have really separated from a lot of different people, with even John King, or before that with Pat Collins and other coaches too. But when I saw that score come out the first day, like I do a game on Fridays, and I don't know if my first game was a Thursday or Friday, the radio broadcast, but I look at the scores and I keep up with East Texas as much as I have always kept up with them. And I saw that, I went, all right, either there was some terrible weather or these are two typical, like old school East Texas teams who beat each other like a couple of rams on the side of a mountain. Is that what it was? That's
exactly what it was. The weather wasn't great, but both defenses really got after each other. It was a very physical football game. It was like it was in the old East Texas district when we played everybody twice and just beat the fire out of each other. And defenses are usually ahead of the offenses early in the game and early in the season. And we had quite a few coming back, and so did Coach King and Coach Berry. They had a ton of kids coming back, and basically they were just a little ahead of the offenses, and we just pounded it out. Both teams got a whole lot better because of that game and went and started moving forward at that point.
Todd, you mentioned the districts back in East Texas. There was a couple of years where, because of the separation of enrollments, that Dallas kind of was getting larger, and Houston, of course, Conroe, all that area was getting larger. And Lufkin, Longview, Robert E. Lee, and also John Tyler were like on an island. And they all ended up in one district, played each other twice. Can you I loved it. One, and selfishly I loved it because it was contained, but also as a broadcaster, I didn't have to worry about like reloading a spotter board, laminated or whatever that I did. Some changes. Can you kind of reflect back on that and how really difficult and what a grind that was?
Well, it all started. We had the realignment, and they sent us all the way up to Rockwall and all that. And so our district, that the East Texas guys, decided they would appeal it, and they said, okay, well then play each other twice. And so we just loaded up, and I want to tell you, it's tough when you play somebody in the regular season and then in the fourth round you play them again, but play them 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
And try to have a different game plan away from what you really do, because every team has something that they fall back on, and that's who they are. And so you're trying to figure out what to do. And us and Longview played twice in the regular season, then played again in the fourth round. We played 3 times that year. And so you're trying to figure out what you do different, but it's still who you are. It's a tough thing. And I'm going to tell you, just back then, it wasn't all this spread offense and all that. They lined up and had 2 tight ends and wings and went right at you. And you had, each time you played, you had a different 11 on the field because it was just that tough. And but we have tough kids in East Texas, and all those teams that we're talking about have tough, good old country kids, and they get after each other.
Well, Alan Wilson ran the wing tee. Mike Owens ran a scheme that was like almost, I don't even know, a lot of trap plays. They ran the fullback. You know
Right.
that. They had, and then, of course, what you guys were doing with you spread it out a little bit, but still you would run the ball with the Jaworski lanes and names like that.
Right.
And then Longview, they'd have the sniffer back for a long, long time. And whenever they get mad and they don't play well, I know John King told me, we're going to stick that fullback right behind the quarterback, and they go back to the fundamentals. You played Longview, I mentioned that. You play Nacogdoches, and you will forever, and it's been a dominant series in favor of Lufkin. And you also played JT, or now Tyler High. Is it important because you've kind of been separated again? Now you're down towards the Houston area to stay with those East Texas traditions and ties.
Absolutely. We have to hold on to this, and not just that, but just know that in preparation to get you where you want to get, you've got to play teams that play the same type of football you want to play. And you're always going to get hard-nosed, tough football games here. You're not getting the spread out stuff. Longview's been in the eye since 1930. They're going to run the ball right at you, and you have to. That's not normal anymore. That is a huge advantage when they start coming off the ball. Most people in the offensive line, they're shielders, or they're just guiding you where you want to go. They're coming off the ball, driving the sled every day, and you have to prepare for that so that it's not a shock to you when you get to that point. And so what you're getting here, and the benefits of that, playing that style of football is going to benefit you later on in the year.
The last 4 years, your record is 21-20, and that's not normal for Lufkin. You'd mentioned where you are this year with so many seniors, and also a team that kind of gets each other on your right or left, whether it's on the offensive line or on defense or whatever. How difficult was it that it was just not able? You weren't able to get over the hump for 4 years.
Yeah, it was. It's tough. We're not used to that. Coach Outlaw always said, you better go to a place that expects to win. There's things that come with that, but you need to coach and teach at a place that expects to win, and they expect to win here, and 21-20 is unacceptable. And so, we went to work in January with the kids. We knew it was a special group, and we knew just how they handled themselves, even in January, and you get that group. There's nothing wrong with the groups that we had. It was just a different bunch of kids. But this is a special group. They take in what you say, and they try to do what you ask them to do, and they play the game the way it's supposed to be played. And so, I tell the coaches all the time, don't just look past this. This is a special group, and enjoy it. And just make sure we give them every opportunity to be successful.
You don't have a large enrollment, obviously, and you're going against some schools that might have twice as many kids as you do, and same young men as you do. Same thing with, in a way, with Lee, who has a little bit of a slighter uptick in 6A, and Longview back and forth 5A, 6A. John Tyler usually 5A. That's not easy. Now, again, your 2001 team beat Euless Trinity in the semifinals. I was at that game, pouring down rain, when you came back and beat them in an incredible game. But you don't have a lot. Does that eventually just kind of wear you down a little bit over the years?
It does, and it really affects you. It doesn't really affect the first 11 on each side of the ball. It's week 10 when you're playing that third defensive tackle or you're playing that third offensive lineman that's coming in. You know, depth is a thing, and when we were very successful, our twos were good. We were larger. We were about 2,500 kids, and we had the backups that were as good as some of the other people's starters. And so depth is a big thing when you get to this point. Everybody's banged up. Everybody's fighting the same thing that we're fighting. It's just the caliber of kid that comes in, the replacement that is the difference. We don't see it as a problem. We adjust and coach that kid up to give him a chance. So you can make an excuse for it, or you can handle it and take care of the situation. And that's how we choose to do it.
You went to Malvern High School. That's a Ouachita Baptist. When were you introduced to John Outlaw? Was he at a Ouachita Baptist, or where was he when you got to know him?
His first year in Arkadelphia was the season of 1979, and I was a senior. And Malvern and Arkadelphia they touch, and so a huge rivalry game every year. And so that was his first head coaching job. He's 25 years old, and we were in the same district and played them. Got beat 7-6 in the first game, and then played them again in the third round of the playoffs, and they beat us, and they went on to win a state championship that year. That's when I first figured out or knew who he was, because he was the head coach of that team we were playing. And then being in the same city there at Ouachita and Arkadelphia, he would come to the practices, and I got to know him there, just because when you're around people, you understand, hey, that cat's got it. There's something about him, and they're not hard to find. And so wanted to get to know him. Coached 2 years at Ouachita when I got out. And then he had a secondary job open in 1986, and hired on there, and then was with him until 2011.
Yeah, yeah. And, of course, you won a state title, as you mentioned, at Arkadelphia.
Yes, sir.
And then Sherman, had a nice run at Sherman, and then what you did and what you guys did together in Lufkin with the 2001 state championship, Reggie McNeil, and so much more. What did you learn from him in life?
Well, he always had sayings. He always had things that he lived by, and you had to weed through some of them. But he, he talked about just the kids, and that everything he did was for the kids. It was directed toward it. There was going to be a result that the kids were going to benefit from that. Not everything was positive. Not everything was peaches and cream, or whatever you want to say. It was some hard-nosed stuff that he held kids accountable for. And so as long as it was good for the kids, or the kids would benefit from it, that's what guided what he did. And that was probably the number one thing. We can't lose sight of what we're doing here. Everything's important. Winning's important, and it is very important. But what we turn out, and when those kids leave this building, what they take with them is far more important than the number of wins and losses. It is our job, and that's what guided his decisions, and that impacted all of us coaches. It impacted our families, and it impacted the kids around us. And so he never lost sight of that. It was always for the kids, or for our kids, when he made decisions.
Yeah, and you, of course, have been now the head coach, as you mentioned. He passed away late in 2011, right before Christmas, and you took over interim coach, and then, of course, you've been the head coach since 2012. Are there enough, and you are old school, and I know John King is, and there are other schools and coaches like that, but are there enough, do we have enough John Outlaws, John Kings, and Todd Quicks type philosophy in high school football these days? Is that even allowed as much anymore?
I think there are some still around, and it's the older crowd. I mean, it is changing the how it's done and how kids are dealt with and all that. It is different in some places. but that's what keeps us in East Texas since 1995. It is still the thinking at home. It's still the raising of the kids and the way that they're expected to be in the classroom and the hallway. So I think it's regional. I think it's where you're at. There are some places that it is not this way, but as long as we can continue to do this, I think kids deserve it. I think they need it, and they need this style of responsibility and accountability.
Todd, I always thought when I was there, and I started my career in Lufkin, Nacogdoches in 91, Ed Cawley was the coach at Lufkin. Then I moved to the Longview area and covered the Tyler Longview area. But I always, because there really wasn't a college football program, SFA in Nacogdoches, and then there's some other schools, junior colleges, et cetera, in Division III, but there never really was a college. Like A&M was a little bit further south. Other schools were west or north. But I always tried to treat that East Texas area, no matter the class, whether it was Groveton in 2A or 3A or anyone else, the Dangerfields of the 80s that were so dominant, as almost like our college conference. I always wanted it to be like they had the pride you hear like now about the SEC with Lufkin, Nacogdoches, Marshall with Dennis Parker, and others. Do you kind of still feel like, even though it's been separated a little bit, did you kind of get that same feeling when you first got to Lufkin?
Absolutely. I mean, it's when it was together, that was the comparison of it. Just the type of brand of football and the type of kids that are at these schools. You walk up and down the hallways of any school and you're going to get the same type of kid here. It's just where we're at, where we live and how we're raised. And so I think the feeling is still that way. Even though we're not in the same district and all that, mm-hmm. It's close enough, and the style that people play here and how they coach the kids, they're coached hard, and we demand a lot of stuff out of them. And that can't go away. I mean, it has to be that way here. But absolutely, that thinking is still here, even though we're not in the same district.
By the way, a lot of people don't know this, is that when I did the games for Lee High School, and I did some playoff games for John Tyler and Lufkin, Longview, those games would be the ones that were I'd get juiced up for them. John Outlaw and I didn't always get along.
Right.
You may remember this. I don't know. I have to tell this story, but I want to get back to you and your career. And I don't remember when it was. 98. It was, I believe, 1998, which was an incredibly intense year. JT and Lufkin and Lee were all good. Longview was good. And you guys went to Rose Stadium and won a game, I think, in overtime on a long touchdown run. I don't remember that. Like, I can't remember yesterday, but I do remember that. Right. And then JT the next week in double overtime beat Lee at Rose Stadium. But John and I didn't get along. One, he kind of had that old high school coach mentality where he didn't trust many people. And when I would ask him for, hey, can you send me your starters in two deep, he would send me like guys that weren't even on the roster. And then after that game, and there was a player at Lufkin who had gotten himself in trouble, and a quarterback at Lee that had gotten himself in trouble, Jeff Hilliard. And there was and JT had some problems too. But I got in the car. I don't know if you ever were told this or not, but I got in the car like on a Monday or Tuesday, and I got a bunch of barbecue from Rudy's. And I drove down to Lufkin, and I still knew who the athletic secretary was. And I want to think her last name started with a G, and I can't remember who that might have been. Gassaway or something. Galloway. Yeah. Yes. And I called her. I said, I said, hey, I'm coming down there. Don't tell John. Don't tell Coach Outlaw. I'll be there in an hour and a half. And I walked into the field house, and he was in his office, and it was like, whoa, what are you? And you know what we did? Like two grown men, we cleared the air. Right. I just was saying, John, I'm just trying to do my job. I used to work at Lufkin. Do you remember kind of those things along the way?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That is him to a T. But, he was an eye-to-eye and jaw-to-jaw guy. He wanted to – that's how he wanted to operate. And we need more people like that.
So when you did take over because of the tragic death in 2011, when you took over, how big of a job was that for you, and how you proceeded to try to continue what had been there, but also put your own touch on it?
That's a tough thing right there. And we had it was, it happened right before Christmas, and so we had the spring, but there's not a whole lot of time in between, and then we start the season. And so when you follow someone like that, follow the person that had such a huge impact on all the kids that we had, it's tough. But you have to. There was nothing wrong with the program at the time, but you have to put your stamp on it. One story was our quarterback. He comes back in, and his hair is all the way halfway down his back. And I said, man, you got to get that cut. That's not it's a safety thing, and it's also a rule. It's just, and he said, well, Coach Outlaw would have let me have this. And I said, well, and as much as, and no one loved him more than I did, and benefited from him more than I did. And I said, look, he's not here anymore, son. This is how we're going to do it now. And out of no disrespect or anything, but it is a tough situation when you follow someone like that. And as much for me and all the other coaches around, it's tough on the kids too. And so there's a period of that, but you got to move forward. You got to go forward and put a stamp on it, and then put your own thing on it and go to work.
All right, so your team 8-1, Galveston Ball 8-1. You have the showdown coming up on the road down there. Why are you in this position? I know you mentioned the seniors, but who are players, and I know you don't need to mention 20 of them, but who are a couple of guys that have stood up for you, that have made some things happen, and also what you see in Galveston Ball, which is also like an old school type mentality?
Right. Well, I think the biggest thing for us is our quarterback, Quincy Kuti. Quincy was starting outside receiver. Our quarterback that we had, a junior kid, Jay Johnson, was injured in the scrimmage. And so we held him out 2 weeks and then brought him back and then re-injured his shoulder. So during this time, Quincy makes the change from wide receiver, never played quarterback in his life, made the switch to quarterback, and has really taken it over, and has made himself, just by working, a pretty good quarterback and a pretty good handler of the offense. He's taken it over, and he's a wide receiver. He is going to play wide receiver at the next level, will not play quarterback. But for us, he's the leader of our offense, and the reason we're where we're at right now is how he has embraced this role and taken it over. Hang on.
Oh, that's okay. I've kept you longer than I thought.
No.
You've had some great players there. Reggie McNeil, Jaworski Lane. You mentioned Kuti, Kiki, Des Bryant, Kedron Young, Terrence Parks. We could go on and on and on, and I don't want to forget anybody. That school has produced some alphas, no doubt about it, haven't they?
That's right.
Haven't you?
Right.
Yeah.
You had Eric McCoy, which is with the Saints
Yes.
now. We've been very, very lucky and very fortunate to have kids like that, and that have gone on and been very successful there. It's been a great place to be.
Stubblefield had a great run there at quarterback too. But so Todd, you've been there now and you've done a great job. There was the stretch recently, and I know it was difficult. What have you learned about yourself during that time and during your time as the head coach and where your team is today?
Well, you go back to what you do, what you know. You try new things and everything, but when it boils down to it, hard work, outworking people, doing things right when nobody's looking. It all comes out in the wash when you do things right, and you can't be somebody else. You can't be something else. You got to be yourself, and that's what we have done since January. We've gone back to our roots, gone back to our learning, and we have outworked people up to this point. And so that's the key to success, we think.
Yeah, and that's why you are succeeding. It's great to see you. I haven't seen you in forever. I've talked to you, and I know you guys get a bunch of annoying email from me all the time about, hey, send me this and that. I know I pepper you guys even during the offseason with upcoming season information. I'm proud of what you're doing, what you represent. I wish you the best against Ball and also into the playoffs, Coach. Thanks for your time.
Yes, sir. Well, we appreciate all the email. We do appreciate it. We still consider you East Texas, and you'll always be East Texas to us.
Well, I'm proud to represent that area because that's where I cut my teeth and still stay in touch. Thank you. It's Todd Quick, head football coach at Lufkin, 8-1 and 8-1. Galveston Ball hosting Lufkin coming up to close out the district schedule. When we come back, we're going to have the best games of the weekend. That's one of them. Smoaky.com statewide high school podcast continues.
When you need power, performance, and head-turning style, you need Peters Chevrolet. Check out the 2024 Chevrolet Silverado. 1.9% for 36 months with discounts up to $10,000 off on custom crew cabs. 2024 Silverado prices starting at $36,995. Whether you work hard or play hard, take your pick out of the largest selection of new Chevrolets at Peters Chevrolet. Online at peterscars.net. Peters Chevrolet. Together, let's drive.
El Conquistador Restaurants are a very proud sponsor of the Midway Panthers, have been owned and operated by the Gonzalez family since 1969. El Conquistador is recognized annually as a local favorite with their fast and friendly service. Dine in or order takeout and enjoy your favorite Tex-Mex items as well as several traditional menu items. Catering is also available with 3 locations to serve you: Waco, Belmead, and Hillsboro. The Gonzalez family thanks you in Waco and the surrounding area for your continued support of 55 years in business. Go Panthers!
Hi, I'm Mark Stewart with Bird Colgin Ford. It's that time of year, it's football season. Bird Colgin Ford is a proud supporter of the best high school football right here in Central Texas. BK Ford is proud to sell the #1 selling truck in Texas, the F-Series truck, 47 years in a row. Come see the largest showroom in Texas and experience better at Bird Colgin Ford.
There are 26 letters in the alphabet, over 600,000 words in the dictionary, and just 3 of them said together can change everything. Let's order pizza. Those 3 words lead to dough made from scratch and 3 fresh signature cheeses that blanket golden crust in a heavenly melt on Marco's Pizza that'll blow your mind. So visit Marcos.com to order and stop by Marco's Pizza in Belmead, China Spring, Woodway, and in Robinson. Marco's. Pizza lovers get it.
We wrap it up every week with the best games of the week, and of course there could be 80. But we try to cut that list down to about 10 or 15, some weeks maybe more than others. Here are the games of this week. Now, I always try to explain it in case you're just now watching this for the first time. There's a number on the left that's in black, and you see above it says Jerry's Picks. There's also in the second to the right column on the right, there's Jerry's Picks. The number in black is who is favored in games that are between very highly ranked teams. Some of them are pick 'em, some of them are 1, 2, 3 points, some of them are double-digit games. We'll get to those too. The number all the way to the right that Garrett, of course, puts out this graphic with me in blue are the ranked totals. And what that means is, for example, Summer Creek is number 1 in the index, and Galena Park North Shore is number 4. So that's 5. And the lower the number, the better the ranked game. Now, Summer Creek lost to Atascocita. North Shore beat Atascocita in that same crazy District 23 6A. But Summer Creek with Jerry is a 5-point favorite. In his index, Jerry Forrest, what a great dude he is. So there we are with that. Then you have Abbott and Aquila, longtime rivals in 6A around the Central Texas area. Abbott with the son of Terry Crawford now. He's running the show, and they continue to win. There's Malakoff. I did not even realize, I did, but I didn't. I guess that these two teams were in the same district. It's a banger game. I call it a banger game when you have 2 highly ranked teams. Josh Finney, the head coach at Winsboro, Malakoff and Jamie Driscoll. My goodness, this is a fantastic game. Kincaid and Episcopal, there's always 1 or 2 just phenomenal games in the private schools, and there's one between Kincaid and also Bel Air Episcopal, who's played a very difficult schedule. Holiday and Jacksboro up in the northwest. There is Panther Creek and Sulphur Springs, 8-1s there. Pleasant Grove, who beat Gilmer. Remember, what was it, 27-10? They have Van, Jared Moffitt, the coach at Van. We highlighted them earlier this year. Pleasant Grove still a good 2-touchdown favorite in that game, but a heck of a game. Hampshire Finette, a slight pick against West Orange Stark. Lovelady and Grapeland, and a fantastic game in 2A. Post at Abernathy. The reason I bring up Post is the Antelopes. They've always been pretty good. Jennifer, my daughter, who went to Texas Tech, one of her best friends at the sorority, Casey, is from Post. And anytime she's like out at some reunion or they're at the lake or whatever, and I see Casey she's with Casey or her name comes up, I always call her Post. And so there's a good game there, a pick'em game against Abernathy. Union Hill and St. Joe. Union Hill has long time been a very good six-man team. Won state titles back at the end of, I think, the 70s and even won in the early 80s. Jim Ned, that's Colt McCoy's alma mater against Sweetwater. Lufkin and Galveston Ball, which we talked about with Todd Quick earlier. De Leon Hamilton. Flower Bluff, and also Veterans Memorial, and a one-point game there. Garrison and also Joaquin, the Rams. And Lone Star and Reedy and a couple of teams, really good teams in the Frisco ISD School District. All right, thank you to Garrett Ross. Thank you to our sponsors, our title sponsor, Peters Chevrolet and Randy Peters. Next week, playoff time. 6 weeks to go. There will be teams that have to win 6 games. Well, you all have to win 6 games, except in six-man, I think it's 5. 6 wins, you win a state title. This is the last week. Enjoy it. Some teams won't play anymore. Some players will never play the game again. I hope everybody has a great weekend. And this is the Smoaky.com statewide podcast underneath the umbrella of 365 Sports. 3rd and 2. They stack the line of scrimmage. There's Dom Hill. There he goes. Dom Hill 40. Dom Hill 30. Downhill Dom Hill. Touchdown. 61 yards.
Smoaky.com presents the Texas High School Football Show on 365 Sports. Brought to you by Peters Chevrolet.
Medlock, they fake it to him. James Keeper off the left side, breaks the tackle, into the secondary, skips away, and he will score. Touchdown, Duncanville.
Here's David Smoke.